All right. Hello, Nayfeh Nation. Thanks for being here with us today. I want to welcome you to today's webinar. I see 12:01 Eastern on my clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I do see people still jumping on, so hopefully people can join us. Just a couple housekeeping things before we get started. You've got the chat dialogue box that you can certainly feel free to use. In addition, we would ask any Q&A type of questions. If you've got a question for David McKnight as we go through it, please put those in the Q&A section so that we make sure that we get those addressed as time permits as well. I do see there was a question here about is this a secure Zoom channel? I'll answer that and say yes, it absolutely is. So good warning, and good to make sure we're staying safe with that. Don't want any Zoom bombing on the Nayfeh Town Hall meeting. So again, want to welcome everyone. My name is Brock Jolly. I have the pleasure of hosting today's Nayfeh Town Hall. And on behalf of the entire executive committee and the board of Nayfeh, I want to welcome you to today's webinar. Certainly, we continue to be in interesting, challenging, unique times. It's my son, who's in kindergarten, his class is doing time capsules to sort of put their thoughts together, because, you know, you think about it, oftentimes it's very, very tough when you're right in the eye of the storm to sort of see anything else. And I was thinking about that, you know, what a unique time it is. And as Nayfeh, we're really trying to figure out how we can find those silver linings and find those opportunities in the middle of the crisis. And this is one of those ways, and certainly excited to have all of you here today. I'm really excited, for one, to hear David McKnight and his thoughts. Always a good message. And so I know that'll be great. I want to just share with you a couple of things. Just a reminder that with these Nayfeh town halls, I know some of you have been here for every single one of them. You will get a loyalty prize at the end of this. I'm kidding on that, only kind of. But appreciate you being here. If you haven't had a chance to jump on all of them, please do know that all of these webinars and town halls have been archived on the Nayfeh website. You can just visit belong.nayfeh.org. In those archives, last Thursday, we had an awesome presentation from former MDRT president and Forum 400 president Scott Brennan, which was great. But we've also got presentations from Joe Jordan and Tom Hegna, Jamie Hopkins, Wade Pfau, Deirdre Van Ness, Dave Resseguie, Van Miller, Ryan Pinney, Ike Trotter, John Richardson, as well as, if you've got any questions and want to review the information on the CARES Act and the Paycheck Protection Program webinars that we did with our outside legal counsel, Steptoe and Johnson, those are up there as well. Diane Boyle is represented there. Lots and lots of good information. And really what we're trying to do is just continuing to provide value to you as our Nayfeh members. Do keep in mind, too, that these town hall meetings are open to not only Nayfeh members, but also non-members. So we would certainly encourage and appreciate any non-members to consider joining, because I for one think Nayfeh membership is critically important, but want to welcome those of you who may not currently be Nayfeh members. Lots of our sister organizations under the big tent joining us on today's call. Also want to draw your attention to a couple of upcoming things. Number one, the Nayfeh CEO Panel, which we'll talk about a little more, but that is May 12th at 1 p.m. with Susan Neely, Ken Benson, and Wayne Chopas. And then on Thursday, May 14th at 2 p.m. Eastern is our next Nayfeh Live event with Marcus Henderson. And that's going to be fantastic. Marcus always has just a great message. And then also Nayfeh Impact Week, which is designed as a replacement in many ways for the Nayfeh Congressional Conference, which was going to be held in Washington, D.C. Obviously, because of coronavirus, makes that difficult to meet live. So please join us May 19th through 21st. We've got some very, very exciting announcements that Kevin's going to share with everyone today, and go over some of the cool things that are happening there. But our next Nayfeh Town Hall meeting will be on May the 28th. So because of everything that we're doing with the CEO panel, Nayfeh Live, et cetera, we're sort of deviating from our normal Monday and Thursday schedule for the remainder of the month. With that, I want to turn it over to Kevin Mayu to give us the update for what's going on with Nayfeh. And Kevin continues to lead the troops who just continue to do more and more and more, in these unprecedented times, and certainly want to commend, among others, Nayfeh Ceo, Suzanne Carawan, Zach Hewells, and others who just are doing a great job with these town hall meetings, and just everyone at Nayfeh doing a fantastic job of providing value to our members. And so the leader of the troop is Kevin, and he's just doing a great job with creating that vision and helping to drive value to our members. So with that, Kevin, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Brock. And again, good morning or good afternoon, everybody. Glad that you're here for our 8th week for most of us in the country of this new norm as we're dealing with COVID-19. Just wanted to, again, welcome you and let you again know that, these events, these opportunities for us to interact virtually is really what a professional association does for its members. And Nayfeh has been the professional association for our industry for 13 complete decades, 130 years of serving you, representing you, and helping to elevate the profession. So we're glad that you're here, whether you're a member of Nayfeh or you're not a member. We welcome you. We want to make sure that we unite the entire group together, provide you with good information, and help you become even more prepared as a professional, so you can better serve your clients and do good things for the American citizenry. So just a couple things I want to hit, and Brock hit on some of them, so it's reemphasizing things. Next Tuesday, May 12th, we've got a great panel taking place. I'll be leading a discussion with 3 of the best and brightest in the entire industry, the CEOs of ACLI, SIFMA, and IRI, Susan Neely, Ken Benson, and Wayne Chopas, respectively. And we'll have a conversation about, again, what's happened and how the industry has evolved as COVID-19 has spread around the world, and what we're doing as an industry, and key things for you as a producer to take away from it. So be on the lookout for that. It's going to be a great conversation next Tuesday, the 12th at 1 o'clock Eastern. Please join us as we have great talks with Susan, with Ken, and with Wayne. So please join us then. As Brock also mentioned, Nayfeh Nation Impact Week is taking place May 19th to the 21st. So on Tuesday, the 19th, we've got a 3-hour block from noon until 3 p.m. Eastern about diversity and our efforts to make sure that you as producers can serve diverse communities, and we can also work to make sure that our profession is more diverse and represents the great tapestry that is the American society. On Wednesday, May 20th, we've got another 3-hour session, again, noon to 3 p.m. Eastern, about advocacy and action. And we're going to hear from our incredible government relations team talking about what's going on in Washington, D.C., how you can make an impact on public policy, and that we even have several members of the United States Congress who will be joining us via Zoom and will be coming in and talking to you all again about ways that you can impact public policy. So that, again, is Wednesday, the 20th. And then on Thursday, May 21st, we've got our Leadership Day. So again, this is a pattern, same 3 hours, noon to 3 p.m. Eastern. You'll have an opportunity to gain great leadership skills, to hear from some absolutely inspirational speakers, and to better make sure that you're postured to be a leader for your team, for your organization, and of course for your clients. That's a great opportunity there. And giving you guys, since you were the ones that were on the town hall call, at about 1 o'clock Eastern today, a press release is going to go out, but you guys get the scoop and you get to hear it first. And that is, we are very pleased to announce that on Thursday, May 21st, we have a special keynote guest speaker who's going to be joining us. And that is Kevin O'Leary, who you may know as Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank. Kevin will be joining us. He'll be joining us for an hour and presenting and talking again about lessons learned, his observations about what's going on with COVID and the world moving forward. We'll probably answer some Shark Tank type questions, and will just be a great presentation for us. Again, and that is Thursday, May 21st. Please join us as Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank, Kevin O'Leary, is present during our Leadership Day. So join us for that. Also want to remind everybody that all 3 days are free and open to all financial security professionals. So, we'd love it if all of our Nayfeh members join, but also if you know other folks that are out there in the profession and they're not yet members of Nayfeh, invite them to join. We'd love to have them there. Again, it's free and open, and the more people, the merrier. We can have a louder voice when it comes to advocacy. We can learn to serve diverse communities. We can also become better leaders. And then you can also say, hey, come join me one of my buddies, Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank, is going to be talking to our group. Why don't you come join us on Thursday, the 21st? So exciting times. We've got great stuff going on. Thanks again for your support of Nayfeh. Again, the original, the largest, the most influential professional association in our space. Back to you, Brock.
Love it. Thanks, Kevin. Great stuff. Just there's so much going on, guys and girls, and it's exciting, and I am excited to be part of it. Kevin O'Leary is going to be amazing, and so please make sure you carve that time out to join us. I'm excited to change gears a little bit and introduce our keynote speaker. And so I would be remiss as someone who is sitting in a basement office in Arlington, Virginia, to not start by saying, originally from Arlington, Virginia, David McKnight graduated from Brigham Young University with honors in 1997. Over the past 23 years, David has helped put thousands of Americans on the road to the 0% tax bracket. He has been featured in numerous publications, including Forbes, USA Today, the New York Times, Fox Business, Bloomberg Radio, Market Watch, CBS Radio, CNBC, Yahoo Finance, Kiplinger's, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. David has spoken at the $1 Million Roundtable, Forum 400, and of course, numerous Nayfeh meetings. He's a multiple-time top-of-the-table qualifier. David is the author of, how about this? The Power of Zero, Look Before You Lerp, and The Volatility Shield. In 2019, The Power of Zero was ranked as the #9 best financial resource in the country by Forbes magazine. This book was recently made into a full-length documentary film, also entitled The Power of Zero. If you haven't seen it, do yourself a favor, do your clients a favor, go watch the movie. It's fantastic. Why is the 0% tax bracket so important? Because if tax rates double, as some experts predict, 2 times 0 is still 0. This is especially relevant today as our country now faces nearly a $25 trillion debt. And I don't want to take any of his thunder, but I'm guessing David's going to talk about, how do you make up for all of the money that's gone into the Paycheck Protection Program and the EIDL and all of these different things. As the president of David McKnight and Company, he mentors hundreds of financial advisors from across the country who specialize in the Power of Zero retirement approach. He and his wife, Felice, have 7 children. So with that, David, excited to turn it over to you and take it away.
Well, thank you, Brock, for that warm introduction. And of course, always great to hang out with a fellow Arlingtonian. So how to advise in a COVID-19 world. So let's jump into this. And I think that the first thing that we've got to recognize is that starting January 1st, 2018, taxes went on sale. And, it used to be people would say, hey, Dave, when are tax rates going up? And I'd say, in some distant, unknowable future, tax rates are likely to be higher than they are today. Well, guess what? We now know the year and the day when tax rates will go up. January 1st, 2026. I talk about this in chapter 6 of the updated and revised version of my book, The Power of Zero. I call it the tax sale of a lifetime. So we know exactly when tax rates are going up. So that's the first sale. And guess what? Every year that goes by where we fail to take advantage of historically low tax rates is potentially a year beyond 2026 when we could be forced to pay the highest tax rates we're likely to see in our lifetime. Now, I've talked forever about the threat of higher taxes. I've talked about unfunded obligations. Brock talked about how the debt in our country is closing in on 25 trillion. By the way, I remember making a Facebook post about 3 weeks ago, telling everybody that we just hit $24 trillion of taxes. Well, guess what? I looked at the debt clock 3 days ago and we just hit 24.7 trillion. So we accumulated $700 billion of debt in 3 weeks, and what normally takes almost a year to accumulate that kind of debt. So guess what? We're going to blow past 25 trillion, but you know what? I'm not really so much worried about $25 trillion of debt. I'm worried about what the true national debt is. And this is where I like to refer to Dr. Larry Kotlikoff, who has about a 7-minute appearance in our movie, The Power of Zero, The Tax Train is Coming. He's the foremost expert he's an economist out of Boston University. He's the foremost expert on what we call fiscal gap accounting. And basically what fiscal gap accounting does is he projects out over the next 75 years, everything that we've promised to pay for Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, interest on the national debt, the cost of running the government. And then he projects out over that same time period what we can actually afford to pay under today's tax rates. And he says, if there's a difference between those two numbers, that's what we call a fiscal gap. And he then takes the net present value of that future fiscal gap. And he basically says, okay, how much money would we have to have sitting in a bank account today, earning treasury rates to be able to deliver on everything that we've promised, right? He says the real national debt is not 25 trillion, as the federal government tells us. It's not 120 trillion, as some economists say. It's actually much closer to $239 trillion. In other words, we would have to have $239 trillion sitting in a bank account today, earning treasury rates to deliver on all of the promises that the federal government's made for Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, interest on the national debt, so on and so forth. So, by the way, that $239 trillion fiscal gap is prior to the CARES Act. It's prior to the $2.2 trillion of stimulus. And by the way, the federal government reserves the right to spend a lot more than that, nearly $4 trillion more. And we know that there are more stimulus packages in the offing. So I'm anxious to see what Dr. Kotlikoff says will be the new fiscal gap, the true national debt. I imagine that he'll come out with that sometime soon. So why do we believe that tax rates in the future are likely to be dramatically higher than they are today? Because the federal government has promised way more than they can afford to keep. They gave us a tax break, which David Walker, former Comptroller General of the federal government, he famously said, they gave us the dessert before they gave us the spinach. They gave us the tax cuts without finding a way to pay for those tax cuts. So what is the tax sale of a lifetime? Well, over the course of the next 6 years, we have the ability to urge our clients and our prospects to take advantage of these historically low tax rates to get dollars repositioned to tax-free investments. Remember, the cost of admission to the tax-free bucket is you got to be willing to pay a tax. We're simply suggesting that when giving the choice between paying taxes at today's historically low tax rates or postponing the payment of those taxes till some point much further down the road, you're probably better off paying them today. So that's the first tax sale of a lifetime. If you want to go ahead and go to the next slide. What is the second tax sale that's happening right now? Well, we know that the cost of getting to the 0% tax bracket is you got to be willing to pay a tax. Well, guess what? The stock market now is depressed. It's not nearly as depressed as it was about a month ago, but the stock market is still depressed. So what we're encouraging a lot of people to consider is to get some of those assets repositioned to tax-free by way of Roth conversions and by way of other shifting alternatives. Why? Because the cost of getting those dollars shifted to tax-free is much lower than it normally is. I'll give you an example. If you had $1 million in an IRA and you wanted to shift all $1 million of those dollars to tax-free all in 1 year, and I'm not suggesting that you would, but I'm just trying to give you a sense for the math here, that would cost you about $300,000 of tax. So that's an effective tax rate of 30%. That doesn't include state tax, by the way. If at the nadir of the market, at the very lowest point, when the market about a month ago was down about 35%, let's say you had $650,000, the cost of getting that to the tax-free bucket was only, if you shifted it all in 1 year, not saying that you should, but if you did, that would have cost you about $167,000. So what was formerly an IRA worth $1 million is now worth $650,000. The cost of getting that money into the tax-free bucket now is almost half of what it formerly was. We know the stock market's going to bounce back because it always does. Why not let those assets recover in the tax-free bucket? I am making the case right now that there has never been a better time in the history of our country to get to the 0% tax bracket. Why? Because there is a double sale that's going on right now. It's the tax sale of a lifetime, and the stock market is also on sale. So if your clients ever have the hope of insulating themselves from the impact of higher taxes, I would say that right now, right this very moment, is the best possible time to start considering some of these asset shifting strategies that can get their money into the tax-free bucket and shield themselves from the impact of higher taxes. All right, next slide. What is the impact of COVID-19 on the tax freight train? Well, I would say that, and remember the analogy is that there is a tax freight train bearing down on us, okay? And your money sitting in a 401k and IRA is squarely on the tracks. And you've got a couple of choices of what you can do. You can brace yourself for the impact of that tax train, which means that you're likely to spend much less of your hard-earned IRAs and 401ks than you ever thought possible. Or you can get that money systematically repositioned to tax-free over the course of the next 6 years before tax rates go up for good. So for those of you who have seen me speak live, you know that I speak fairly passionately about this idea that tax rates have to go up to keep our country solid. I felt like this was an urgent topic before I ever knew what COVID-19 was. Now that the stimulus has arrived, now that the money that the government's getting from FICA tax is down. They still have to fund Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. People are still marching out of the workforce onto the rolls of entitlement programs to the tune of 10 to 12,000 people per year. All we've really done is accelerate everything that we've talked about in terms of the dangerous repercussions of all of this unfettered spending and unfunded obligations. So I've been telling people historically that the do or die date for our country, the day of reckoning for our country is 2030. From everything I've read and from everything I've studied, that date, because of this stimulus spending and everything that goes along with trying to keep our country afloat and our economy afloat, from everything I understand, that do or die date has moved up 2 years to 2028. So when we're talking about getting our assets protected and repositioned and shielded from the impact of higher taxes by getting them to the tax-free bucket, there's never been more urgency, but I would also say that there's never been a better time given how low tax rates are. And I do like to say that one thing that people love to bring up is they say, hey, Dave, can I be a good person if I'm in the 0% tax bracket? If I have a tax-free retirement, is that even ethical? And I am not suggesting that people not pay tax. I'm simply suggesting that when given the choice between paying taxes at today's historically low tax rates or postponing those payments of the payment of those taxes till some point much further down the road, that you're much better off paying them today. So everything that we've talked about historically has taken on even more urgency, even more relevance, even more poignancy now that COVID-19 is upon us. All right, next slide. How should we approach tax-free planning in today's environment? There will be a temptation to go up to your client and say, hey, I've got this great tax-free vehicle. It's called life insurance. And that becomes the only thing that you talk about. Well, guess what? If all you ever talk about is life insurance, what do you look like? You look like a life insurance salesman. I've been a life insurance salesman my whole life, but that's not the only thing I sell. That's not the only thing I sell. There's nothing wrong with selling life insurance, but people do not hand their life savings over to someone who only ever talks about life insurance. So if you have studied any of my books or listened to any of my podcasts, you know that I recommend multiple streams of tax-free income, none of which show up on the IRS's radar, but all of which contribute to your clients being in the 0% tax bracket. I think that there's typically between 4 and 6 different streams of tax-free income that you should be talking about with your clients, and all of them have unique qualities, and all of them can only do certain things, but when they're used in correlation, in concert with each other, they accomplish a lot of very powerful things. Give you an example. I typically recommend Roth IRAs, Roth 401ks, Roth conversions, taking money out of your IRAs up to your standard deduction so that that's tax-free. I recommend what I call the LIRP, to Chapter 5 of my book, The Power of Zero. It's a life insurance retirement plan. And if you can stay below your provisional income thresholds, that means that your Social Security can be tax-free as well. I'd like to take just a moment or two to talk about each one of those streams of tax-free income, to talk about why they're so unique. The Roth IRA is unique because you can touch the money immediately. You put the money in, you can take it right back out. None of those other tax-free streams of income really allow you to do that. I love the Roth 401k because you can put in $26,000 per year if you're over age 50, but it also gives you free money. It also gives you a match. None of the other streams of tax-free income that we talk about give you the free money. I love Roth conversions because if you got $1 million or $2 million in your IRAs, you can, the Roth conversion becomes the workhorse. It does a lot of your heavy lifting. It can get a lot of those dollars repositioned to tax-free. I love, I talk about the RMDs being the holy grail of financial planning because they do something that nothing else can really do. And that's that they give you when you put money into that IRA to begin with, you got a deduction. The money grew tax deferred, and then you offset those distributions by way of your standard deduction in retirement. So it's tax deductible on the front end. It grew tax deferred. You took it out tax free. There's nothing else that can do that unless you really want to talk about a 529. Now, so that makes the RMDs unique. I love the LIRP because the LIRP, yes, it's safe and productive. Yes, it's tax free. But guess what? It also gives you the ability to gain access to your death benefit in advance of your death for the purpose of paying for long-term care. I will tell you this, 80% of the people that engage with me on the LIRP do so. Yes, they love tax-free. Yes, they love safe and productive, but they love that death benefit that they can access in advance of their death for the purpose of paying for long-term care. So that's unique. Social Security, especially if it's tax-free, can be unique because it can shield you from sequence of return risk. It's coming to you rain or shine, and the longer you live, the better it gets. So I really advocate in a rising tax rate environment, I really advocate having multiple streams of tax-free income, none of which show up on the IRS's radar, but all of which can contribute to your clients being in the 0% tax bracket. So as Brock says, if tax rates double and you're in the 0% tax bracket, 2 times 0 is still 0. All right, next slide. All right, where's the good news? Typically at the end of my presentation, people say, gosh, Dave, I don't know if what you're telling us really is really all that good of news. And I remember a couple months ago, a lady came up to me after one of my presentations. She says, hey, Dave, thanks a lot. I said, what'd I do? She says, now I'm in a really bad mood. And I said, why are you in such a bad mood? And she says, well, I've got all my money sitting in the tax deferred bucket. And I said, let me get this straight. I said, you contributed money to your tax deferred bucket at a period in time when tax rates were likely much higher than they are today. You got a deduction at those higher tax rates for doing so. You now have a 6-year period of time during which to take advantage of historically low tax rates so that you can get those tax deferred dollars systematically repositioned to tax free so that by the time tax rates potentially double over time, you've done all the heavy lifting and you can then take that money out tax free. I said, is that why you're in such a bad mood? And she says, gosh, Dave, I hadn't really thought about it that way. So there's a lot of good news, folks, that we can share with our clients right now. We are at historically low tax rates. The stock market just took a spill. Our assets are depressed. There's never been a better time to reposition dollars to tax-free. We can do it during historically low tax rates so that by the time tax rates potentially double over time, we've done all the heavy lifting and then we can take money out tax-free from multiple streams of tax-free income, none of which show up on the IRS's radar, but all of which contribute to our clients being in the 0% tax bracket. By the way, I always like to say we want to get you at or near the 0% tax bracket because it's not always possible to get our clients to the 0% tax bracket. They may have a pension, they may have rental income, they may have farm income, they may want to work until the day that they die. So we worry about the things that we can control. We don't worry about the things that we can't control. We can't control if they've already decided to draw a pension and elect a pension option. We can't control that, but we can control the money that's in their IRA that is sitting on the train tracks. We can get that money repositioned to tax-free so that by the time the tax freight train comes, we've done all the heavy lifting and we can take that money out tax-free. So that is the message for today. I could obviously go on for hours and hours and hours. For those of you who do want to learn more, you can opt into a free video series. If you want to start transitioning your practice to a Power Zero style practice, powerzero.com. I'd love a follow on Twitter at McKnight & Co. And if you haven't watched the movie, you can watch it for free at thetaxtrain.com. And one thing I forgot to put on here is that maybe some of you have been listening to my podcast I do a different podcast on a different subject as it relates to the tax-free paradigm every single week. We're up to about 80 episodes. That's called The Power of Zero Show. You can find it pretty much anywhere you listen to podcasts. And on the next slide, I'm happy to report that I've got a new book coming out through Penguin Random House, and that is coming in November 17th. It's not for pre-order sale yet. You'll notice that the forward was done by Tom Hegna. I'm excited to talk about strategies where you can have, really what I do is I confront the two biggest risks that I think are out there in retirement. One is tax rate risk, how to shield yourself from the impact of higher taxes. And the second one is longevity risk, which is the number one concern for retirees these days. Will their money last as long as they do? I talk about how you can have a tax-free stream of income that lasts until the day you die in tax-free income for life. And that's coming out November 17th. Should be available for pre-order next couple months.
Awesome. Thanks, David. That great stuff. I mean, it's like drinking from a fire hose, but drinking some really good Kool-Aid out of that fire hose. So love the stuff. We do have a couple of things that have come into the Q&A section. So if you've got questions for David, please feel free to have those there. I think that Elena has done a great job of answering a lot of the logistical Nayfeh questions. But just want to remind everyone that you can get all of David's books that are currently out on the market today. You can get those on Amazon. If you are interested in buying books in bulk, you can also do that. I'm sure David would love to have that happen. And to do that, David, correct me if I'm wrong, but just powerofzero.com/books.
That's right.
Okay, perfect. And you can get some volume discounts there as well. I wanted to share with you too, David. Jimmy Hicks says, "You are my hero, David McKnight." So you've got members of the fan club here as well. So
thank you.
So with that, I don't see any other questions coming in. Do want to remind everyone that we are the first Monday of Disability Income Awareness Month. And so go out there, talk to people, not just about how they can retire in the 0% tax bracket, but also how to protect their income while they're in their working years. Really, really important stuff and good financial planning. So with that, David, thank you very, very much for being here. Hope to see everyone on the CEO panel on May the 12th with Marcus Henderson for Nayfeh Live on May the 14th, as well as at the Nayfeh Impact Week, May 19th through 21st. With that, thanks everybody for joining us. Make it an awesome remainder of your week. Thanks very much.
Thank you.